6 people. So I would like to get right into the event. And first, I would like to invite Orla Kilkulen, who is a climate unit, who works at the climate unit, Department of Foreign Affairs of Ireland. And she is going to introduce us to this panel. Thank you very much. Orla, please, an applause.
I don't have the name of the panelists.
Oh, it's okay. I'll do that. Yeah, I'll take care of that.
Ooh, bright lights. Will help me see my notes. So good afternoon, everybody. It's getting towards the end of COP. Everyone's feeling a little bit tired. Energy levels are low. My computer crashed today, so I think that might be a sign of where we're at. But I think this is a really exciting session and a really important topic. Obviously, a lot of conversations around NAPs, maybe not going as well as we may have hoped at this point in COP in terms of moving things forward in adaptation. But nonetheless, there's still an awful lot of work that's actually going on behind, or in front of the scenes, rather, of the negotiations. So. Really important conversation today, and to be kind of lessons learning on how we can improve the implementation of the NAPS plan. So I'll just go to very briefly. This is very important to the Irish government. A key priority for us in our climate diplomacy work is about improving access and availability of climate finance, and to ensure that it hits the most vulnerable people. So really making sure that the initiatives make their way to the communities on the ground. Communities are the backbone of our society. If we're not involving them, integrating them into all of the programs and making sure they're at the forefront of the design of all of the initiatives and the implementation of adaptation plans, then we risk wasting resources and our efforts into designing interventions activities that aren't going to have any sustainable impact on the ground. So to that effect, Ireland is a supporter of the Life AOR initiative. Aligns very well to the people who were at the previous session on locale, that it's very looking at that the capacity building of government institutions and structures all around the implementation and planning, and then implementation of their adaptation planning. So under the Life AOR, countries, they're strengthening their finance, planning, governance capabilities and coordination systems, and it's to move away from piecemeal project approaches to really look at programmatic cross-government to maximising impact. And as we talk about whole of government approaches, but as in the NAPS we want to look at the vertical piece, and it's looking at whole of community and whole of society approaches as well. So making sure that issues around inclusion and the most vulnerable groups are all being well integrated. We are a strong supporter of other mechanisms around that capacity in systems and people. Obviously the finance is a really key aspect to it, but again, making sure that the systems are there, that the capacity at human level is in the countries that we're supporting. One of the initiatives that we're supporting, and it's something that aligns well with the work that IASD are doing on the NAPS, and it's increasing levels of peer support across countries. So countries that might be at different stages or more advanced in the implementation or design of programs can provide support to their other countries to really ensure that there is that cross-learning. So yeah, I say our priorities are about making sure that the decisions are being made and influenced by the people that are at the front line of all of the interventions that are going to support them. Sorry, I'm going to. So I'm going to pass over to the panel, I think, to kind of get into the meat of the conversation, to make sure that we are kind of learning from each other and initiatives that we know work well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Orla. As you can see here on the slide and on the banner, the Government of Ireland is one of the key funders of the work that we do from the NAP Global Network. So, because the time is short, I would like to present a few slides of a recent analysis that we actually launched at this COP and that we finalized last month. The name is Progress on Vertical Integration in the NAP process, and it's trying to analyze the strategic linkages between the national and the subnational, and I think this can inform the conversation and the exchange that we are going to have. So for those of you who are not familiar with the NAP process, we summarize it as three broad stages, which is the planning, the implementation, the monitoring, evaluation, and learning. And for those of you who were in the previous session, I mentioned it was a great introduction to piggyback because they were talking about the different sets of skills that you need during the different stages, but also at different governance levels, from the local, the subnational, the national, and you can think even of the regional collaboration or the global action as well. As the NAPGN, we also propose these 6 enabling factors, which are leadership, institutional arrangements, engagement, data knowledge and communications, skills and capacities, and financing. And all of those play a key role at different levels, and here are some examples. But I will invite you to download the publication, which are going to provide the code so you can access it. But for now, I would like to give you 3 key findings of this publication. The first one is that the role that is assigned for subnational level governments in NAP documents. We analyzed 45 NAP documents that had been submitted to the UNFCCC until July 2023, July this year. As you can see, implementation and planning is what stands out. To a lesser extent, there is the emerging element of incorporating the subnational governments in the MEL monitoring, evaluation, and learning systems. So that's one of the key findings. The other key finding that I wanted to share with you, because it connects to the panel that we are going to have, is that also there is a relevant role for specific non-governmental actors that are mentioned with a particular role in the adaptation process, which is civil society organizations, as you can see here on the graph, but also micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, local producers, small private sector, and communities, of course. And this actually connects very well, this last on communities, with the last key finding that I would like to share with you, which is whether there is a reference to these 2 approaches of community-based and locally led adaptation. And as you can see, community-based adaptation, for those of you who are familiar with these approaches, have been around for some time, and that is reflected in the analysis of the NAP documents, but also locally led adaptation is a concept that builds on the community-based adaptation work, and we see it emerging clearly in the latest NAPs, in the most recent ones, and others such as EBA, for example. So if you would like to access this publication, you can do so using this code. And there are other findings related to finance, and actually we highlight some of the support that the local colleagues were talking about in Benin in the previous session, and it's got some other elements that will be of your interest, I'm sure. So to move to the panel, I would like to emphasize that you can build skills at different stages of the NAT process. And clearly, skills and capacities is one of the key enabling factors that we as the NAP Global Network have identified. And you could think of skills and capacities in leadership, institutional arrangements, engagement, data, information, and even financing. And this is where we would like to unpack with experts that will bring different perspective to the table. And we have a very rich panel. So I would like to invite Mrs. Pilar Bueno, who is Undersecretary of Climate Change and Just Ecological Transition of the Municipality of Rosario in Argentina. Thank you, Pilar. I would like to invite Ana Asti, who is Undersecretary of Water Resources and Sustainability of the State of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Thank you, Ana. Also, Mr. Bernard Tesome, who is a Senior Climate Change Adaptation Expert of the Environmental Protection Agency of Ethiopia, who recently joined us in an event we had on vertical integration. Leah, who is a project coordinator of UNDP Lebanon. Thank you very much for joining as well. Triana Wardani, who is Secretary General of Suruni from Indonesia, which is an organization that works with women and farmers at a local level, especially empowering women in Indonesia. And Miko Sepúlveda, who is a consultant on climate change and public policies from Chile. So as you can see, we have a very diverse panel, and this is what we really wanted to put together here. So thank you very much for taking time of your very busy days during the second week of COP. So first, I would like to start with Pilar. And Pilar, you have very different hats around the adaptation process, but in this one, maybe I wanted to ask you about one that probably not everyone knows about, but we've been collaborating with you from the NAPG end, and is your role with the municipality of El Rosario, or Rosario, Argentina. And what I wanted to ask you is, from your experience, what are the main capacity needs of municipal governments and for National Adaptation Plan implementation, and how has the NAPGN work contributed to close this gap in your experience? Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mauricio. Thank you for having me today. Well, this is indeed a very nice opportunity in order to give some remarks with respect to Rosario, the city where I'm working in Argentina. Rosario has the opportunity to have a collaboration with the NAP Global Network. Maybe I can start from there in order to identify these capacity needs, because I really believe that our project together finally really is trying to pilot some of the solutions in terms of those gaps. So I will come and go with that in particular. I think that one of the main issues is related to the alignment of NAPs with the local plans. So we have a NAP at the national level, and we also have our plan at the local level. But in many cases, these plans are not aligned. In our case, it is, but we work more in the opportunity because our plan at the local level came before the National Adaptation Plan. Our plan is of 2019, and NAP in Argentina finally is from last year, 2022. So that was a first point, and for sure, we had the opportunity through this project, through the measure 1, the prioritized measure 1, we had an assessment on risks before, but one of our measures was the idea to develop a more complex mapping on climate risks applied to our current situation after 4 years of drought, for example. So our major risk before was, of course, floods forever, and now we are in a very different situation. So this map that we have been developing together is a very good example as how we can deal with many of these capacity gaps that we have and the needs. So in terms of alignment, we are working together in this map with the NAP Global Network and with the national level, using the national methodology of the NAP in Argentina. We use and adapt that methodology on risk chains in order to apply it and to identify 12 main risks applied to the 6 districts in Rosario, using a participatory approach. So we made a lot of participatory process and workshops with the different districts, not only to build awareness to a topic that is difficult. Risk is, at least in our city, is very difficult. When we talk about risk, it's not something so simple to understand from the very beginning, climate risks. So it was a long path, but very, very interesting. Of course, another one is related to the financial gaps and the needs and the opportunity to have a direct access. So the opportunity to have the direct access to this project with the support of the national level of the federal government also help us to build something better together. But sometimes when we have very long bureaucratic process that need to go to the Congress in terms of approval, considering our constitution and everything, probably we could have not have these projects on board. So I think this was quite critical. Another issue, and I realize that I am mentioning some of your enablers, is of course data and information needs. In terms of data and information needs, we have our climate governance in place since last year, including our local cabinet, with the different local, the areas of the local government, as soon as additional to an advisory committee formed with universities, NGOs, and private sector, different chambers. So through this process, this participatory process, through the NAP Global Network project, and with the federal government, we are really building additional data and information that can really nourish our data system. We already have a monitoring system that is uploaded. You can find it in our webpage in Rosario Gobar. But we are also developing this information system, and the plan and the map will be part of that. Let me also reflect something more very, very quickly that is related to also the gaps in methodologies. As I said at the beginning, it's very common that when we talk, for example, about risk assessment and vulnerability assessments, we have a lot of different methodologies available. So sometimes local plans and national plans include different approaches to methodologies, and that turn to the identification of different kind of risks, different coverage. So to have the opportunity to take the same methodological approach also help us really to fit in the NAP process at the national level, but also to use the national experience in all our provinces around the country and to use it at the local level. So yeah, it has been a very nice journey so far, and we are waiting the map to be uploaded very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pilar. And you mentioned a few elements that I think are sometimes overlooked, which is that these processes can be resource and knowledge intensive. You mentioned risk analysis, how the alignment between the methodologies of the subnational level and the national, in this case federal level, are important, the financial support, and of course the technical expertise. So we've been talking about the municipal level, and now we're just going to go across the border, but we're going to move a level up. We're going to go to the state level in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, more specifically. And Anna, you've been working at the state level, and the first, from your experience, the first question I would like to ask you is, what skills and capacities are needed at the state level in Rio de Janeiro to support the implementation of the National Adaptation Plan in Brazil, when you have to deal with a constellation of municipalities, but also with the federal government?
Hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mauricio. It's a pleasure to be here and be able to share a little bit of our experience. I think that one of the biggest challenges is when you have to deal with, you have to build multi-level governance. This is one of our biggest challenges. We have our plan since 2018, and now we are in a moment that we are reviewing our NAP. And in the process of reviewing it, we felt that we were missing a lot of actors in the process. So we have implemented a local forum on climate change for adaptation. And this forum is composed not only by the state government, but also from the cities, representatives from the federal level also, and of course NGOs and civil society organizations, universities, because they bring a lot of information. It's really, really strategic to have the studies with us. We cannot make decisions when we don't have data information, so this is crucial. So the forum, it is essential not only because we have the different actors in place, but because of the information that comes from the city level also and the community level. In this process, we created a program called Rio Climate Program, and besides the revision of the NAP, we have also been developing a platform on climate risk and vulnerability, which is the platform that will bring us the information and the data we need, and will also be transparent in the way that organizations and universities and different actors will be able to have access to the same information as we are gathering. This is very important, that all actors have the access to the same information. And so we've been also trying to bring a lot of good experience from other organizations, also from outside Brazil. And one of the ones that I want to speak with you, it's a project that we are just starting with UN Habitat. It's a project based on the urban agenda, but there is a specific part of this project that is linked to 8 cities in the state of Rio. Rio is a state with 92 cities. We are talking about 17 million people that lives in Rio. I'm in the coast area of Rio, which is more than 600 kilometers of coast. In this area, 85% of the population lives in this area. And in the last study from UNDP, the one that they released 2 days before COP, it says that Rio will probably lose 5% of its area by the end of the century. And we have 85% of this population living in this area. So this is a huge problem for us. And unfortunately, 2 days ago, one of these 8 cities that are in the program with UN Habitat just lost, we lost some lives there due to heavy rains 2 days ago. 300 people got without home because of a landslide due to heavy rains. So there are 8 municipalities that are really in the areas that are very, very vulnerable. And we have 1.7 million people living in more than 1,500 favelas in Rio. Very steep. So it's areas that are very, very vulnerable. And we are starting now these climate action plans, where we are going into these communities, into these areas, and try to figure out with the community how we can develop an action plan that really can get them out of the danger when heavy rains arrive. Because for us, adaptation means our biggest challenge in adaptation is water, for sure in Rio. Water is our biggest challenge. And for example, we have the most basic process in cities as these ones, like when the siren goes up, but people don't leave their houses. They don't believe in it. So it's something that you have really to work close to the community, and you have to raise awareness, you have to educate. There are a lot of work that you have to do that is pretty much linked to talk to people and to make people being together in the plan. They have to build the plan with you. You have to be really local. So with OCDE, we have started also a multi-level governance project based on building action plans for local adaptation and the regulation needed based on a territory, which this one is Guanabara Bay, with 17 municipalities around. And it's also based on going to the local level and bringing it also the idea of what the regulations that we have to have in place in the state to make it possible. And with IDB, we are going to start in next year a nature-based solutions climate change project within 17 also municipalities. And in Rio, nature-based solutions for sure is one of the main challenges that we have to promote the long-term change. Rio, two years ago, made its concession for sanitation, we are now 46% with sewage collection in the Bay Area. We are talking about 13 million people and only 46% of sewage collection. It's really, really polluted, and it's really, really a healthy problem there. So within the concession, in 10 years, we need to change it to 90%. And it's a program of 35 years. So if in the next 10 years we are going to clean our waters, how can blue economy be developed, and also how can we develop a program that all the favelas and all the population that are living in the vulnerable areas will be reconnected to the environment, because now all of them are giving their back to the environment, giving their back to the bay. So we want to make this integration, and this is fundamental part of the NAP process.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hannah. And it's very clear why your starting line was to build multi-level governance, that level of coordination that you need at the state, from the state of Rio de Janeiro makes it very clear. But we also make two more points that I would like to highlight, which is awareness when you have early warning systems. It's not enough to have the systems in place, but you need that the local communities will actually react to those early warning systems, and of course the coordination with the federal authorities. So I would like to move one level up and across a different continent. So Benet, you participated recently in our peer learning summit on vertical integration in the National Adaptation Plan process that took place in Nairobi at the end of October. So based on your experience working at home on that workshop, what are the skills and capacities requested from the subnational level authorities to people like you who work at the national level when you talk to them about the adaptation process?
Okay, thank you. Before I go directly to the question, I just want to mention some of the few milestones that we have achieved through the NAP process, and what we have obtained support from the NAP Global Network and ISCD. Ethiopia has launched its National Adaptation Plan in 2017 and submitted it to the UNFCCC in 2019, and we have obtained many supporters through the NAP Global Network after that time. We have developed our NAP implementation roadmap, resource mobilization strategy, M&A technical working paper, and based on that technical working paper, we have designed our web-based M&A systems, and we have also conducted gender analysis for the NAP. And based on this National Adaptation Plan and based on the documents that we have produced through NAP Global Network, we have recently updated our NDC. In our NDC, 40 adaptation options selected from our NAP are integrated in our NDC. These are some of the major milestones in our NAP process, and based on our NAP implementations, our NDC, which incorporate our NAP, is integrated in the 10-year development plan, and it's cascaded to the subnational level. And based on that experience, and also based on our piloting experience of NAP at the subnational level, and situation analysis that we have conducted at different times for this subnational level piloting exercise, we have identified many capacity gap and technical skills. Some of these are the first major one is resource, and for this purpose, technical skill to design bankable proposal is what is required by the subnational level actors, so that they can design their own proposal and mobilize resources from different sources. There is a huge gap in designing technical bankable proposals. And based on the assessment that we have recently conducted, though there are many projects being implemented by different partners at the subnational level, these are not linked to the climate change objectives, and also they are not linked to the national national level priorities. Therefore, there is a great need in technical capacities in designing bankable programs and in also aligning the projects and programs to the national level and international level priorities and policies and strategies. The second skill and capacity gap which is required and requested by the subnational level actors is on M&E. As I have mentioned, our NAP, which is part of our NDC, is integrated in the Sustainable Development Plan. And for mitigation purpose, we have designed a robust MR review system, which is in place in EPA and also in all sectors. But with regard to the adaptation implementation, there is a huge gap. We have also web-based MN system, but which is not functional because of the technical capacity gap in the national level and also in the subnational level. Therefore, there is a capacity skill gap in how to set indicators, target also, in how to conduct monitoring, evaluation, and learning, and also reporting, fulfill reporting requirement, international and national requirements. Therefore, the second main gap and need is on the M&E. There is some experiences in one locality on using climate data and information to make informed decision in cropping and in other activities of the subnational level actors. But due to the country is very vast, this kinds of capacity limitation to access and utilize resources for decision making is the third capacity gap that I have identified. There is also technology gaps, which is highly required by the subnational actors to utilize and to adapt to the climate change impacts. Therefore, the fourth gap is with regard to the technology. There is also, technical capacity gap in planning adaptation actions in line with the national policies, which I have mentioned above. The fifth capacity gap is in the knowledge management system. There are a lot of efforts being implemented in the country. There are many programs and projects being implemented, but in regard to the documenting this initiative and sharing, there is a knowledge management system lack and capacity gaps on how to do this. Recently, the national coordination structure is adjusted. Ministry of Planning and Development will become the national coordinating entity. Therefore, most of the tasks are done at the national level, but aligning and creating coordination mechanisms and units in the subnational level is still lacking. Therefore, this is the other risk. The last risk that I could mention is capacity gaps to address climate risk and conduct vulnerability assessment is the last risks. Therefore, these are some of the major gaps that are identified in our subnational levels. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was a lot of information, and I would like to highlight maybe an opportunity and a challenge. I think it was very interesting to hear that alignment between the NAP and the NDC, which will be ideal in the national process, like to actually making sure that the two documents, the NDC more looking at the reporting international and the National Adaptation Plan, looking at the implementation at the national level, actually are aligned and speak to each other. And clearly on MEL systems, which is something that it's a challenge at the international level, of course it's a challenge at the national and the subnational level. So I would like to move to a different perspective. And Leah, you're a project coordinator in Lebanon. And we were talking briefly yesterday about some of the challenges. And I would like to ask you, from your experience, what are those skills and capacities that are needed in the Lebanon context, which is, I might say, like, as every country with very particular kind of elements in the implementation of the adaptation actions. Please.
Yes, thank you. Well, as you mentioned, we were talking yesterday about the difficulty of implementing adaptation actions on the local level, and recently, with the NAP Global Network, actually, we've been working more from a national perspective on looking at what are the successes in developing national adaptation plans, so we can look at elements we can learn from, so we can start identifying what needs to go into our national adaptation plan. That's at the national level, but also with the Green Climate Fund, we've also started a project that focuses on increasing climate resilience at the municipal level when it comes to water resources. And looking at capacities from that perspective, it's more for us as a bottom-up approach, where we focus on building capacities within, let's say, water establishments, municipalities, even at the union of municipality level. Because normally, and in the case of municipalities, when you do a lot of capacity building, you increase the skills, the technical capacity of the employees in those municipalities or in the water establishments focusing on water supply in specific areas. You tend to have a big turnover because of mismanagement or governance issues, so you lose those skills. And one of the things that we're trying to do recently is to develop institutional memory within the municipalities or within the establishments by having a roadmap, like a guidance document, where even if you have multiple people coming in and out, you still have that set of skills that exists in the municipalities and exists at the local level. So the adaptation actions, you don't always have to start from zero, right? So that is something that we're heavily focusing on when it comes to increasing capacity at the local level. If you'd like, also, one of the challenges that we have is when it comes to implementation at the local level is the lack of coordinations between different organizations that are working in the same sector. So that's something that we're trying to bridge as well, and we're starting to do that at the inception phase of the projects, where we're bringing all of these stakeholders to give their inputs on the project. Because when you're trying to implement a project in a specific area, whether it's urban or rural, you have a large number of stakeholders that might be working on adaptation actions, but they're not aware of climate change terminology, let's say, so they can call it adaptation. But it is that, So what we've been trying to do is bring in these stakeholders, get their input from the get-go on how do they think we should move forward on the different components of the projects that we're trying to implement. And I think that's really important, and also to be integrated in the overarching National Adaptation Plan that we will be developing. Because you can't work at the local level without the buy-in from the municipalities, without the buy-in from the communities that you're working in. So we're trying to tackle the challenge through capacity building, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. I think it's been a very interesting process to support the Lebanon development of the NAP, identifying good practices from across the world, basically. And I think you are in a very good position that you have that resource, and we've been really happy to contribute to that. And also what you mentioned, how to capture and how to create institutional memory by writing guidelines and methodologies and so on, that even if there is turnover of personnel like this, these documents try to capture and complement those capacities at the institutional level. And of course, the very important issue of coordinating at the local level. You mentioned the water sector, which is a sector where a lot of actors at the international, national, subnational level contribute to from different perspectives, health, and they might not be thinking about climate change impacts, but you raised the point, a really important point, how important it is to actually talk to each other and coordinate on the different actions. So I would like to move to ask a question to Triana, because you bring a very different perspective, working with women in Indonesia, with producers. And we were having a brief conversation yesterday about how local communities understand adaptation, and if they even talk about adaptation to climate change when they're suffering those impacts from weather events. Please, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Before that, I would like to. So I'm here also representing the Global People's Caravan. It's a Global People's Caravan for Food, Land, and Climate Justice is a global South-led campaign of rural peoples to mobilize on interrelated issues of food, land, and climate justice toward radical food system transformation. So, yeah, we both here like from across country, from Asia and the global South. So yes, of course, we are affected by the climate crisis, the extreme hot weather, changing seasonal cycles, through flash floods, tidal floods, erosions, forest fires, typhoons, landslides, crop failure, poverty, even diseases outbreaks, and even global hunger run very fast alongside the fall solutions, snails from the COP annually. People are forced to adapt and build resilience to cover the failure of the global scheme for handling the climate crisis, which frees the climate destroyer countries from historical responsibility, prolonged loss and damage in poor countries, semi-colonial and semi-feudal countries such as Indonesia. So Seruni, along with farmer and minority ethnic organizations in various villages, advance women's struggle in developing environmental collective agriculture by implementing agroecology on the ground, fisheries and farm for food needs, thereby reducing the economic burden of farmers. Food crops such as rice and vegetables and local fruits like duku Melayu or lansones, durian, jackfruit, matoa, mango, guava, longan, and avocado, pure highland Robusta coffee, plantations, seedling cultivations, and local fish development such as baung, toman, snakehead, and tapa coexist with campaign against the propaganda and practices of large-scale monoculture palm oil plantations and wood plantations that have damaged the environment and climate. These practices are part of the national struggle to achieve genuine land reform, to eliminate all form of oppressions and exploitations by imperialism and feudalism in rural and urban areas as a social basis, to realize a national industry that guarantees the progress and welfare of the people and the liberations of women. We believe that the struggle for a genuine land reform is also a fundamental path to restore the natural and climate conditions in Indonesia and the world.
Thank you very much, especially for bringing that complexity of the struggle of the local communities, which is going beyond like just talking about adaptation, but really looking at it, looking at the wider picture of why are they being marginalized and why are they suffering from these climate impacts on the ground. And I would like to move to Amico, because Amico, you've been working at different capacities, but you've been part of different youth movements, both at home in Chile, but also attending COPs, clearly. So I think that gives you a very privileged position as a youth activist. And so I wanted to ask you, from your perspective, what are those needs for NAP implementation in the context of Chile that can really bring that youth voice to the table, also based on what you've seen during this COP? Thank you.
Thank you for having me here. First of all, I want to ask if we can soften or warm up a little bit the room so we can all adapt kindly, because it's really chilly out here. The air condition is like really, really strong. So if we can like go up some
You might
grados,
be right.
grados. I don't know
Yes.
if the people in the operation room could help us because it's really
I'm afraid
chilly.
you are right in front of it.
And we
so-
can adapt more gently. So, yeah. So saying that, yes, I also have the privilege to work consulting and help in the elaboration and implementation of different local plans on climate change. I mean, plans in general at the local level with municipalities, at the subnational regional level with governments, regional governments, and also at the national level with the different ministries. And I've seen different but similar difficulties and needs to address youth issues in the planning and also in the monitoring. And so Chile has like I could say a really strong history of national adaptation plans. We started back in 2008, I think, was the first national adaptation plan, and we are already in the second round of some plans in agriculture, in biodiversity, and the national plan. And also the municipalities took a lot of, I don't know how to say it in English, sorry, like they didn't wait for the government, for the national government to say to them that you should do something, but then civil society did and helped them build local action plans for climate change back in 2014, 2015. Regional plans are more from these last years. And so similarly, the youth perspective is not actually integrated, I would think, like directly mentioned. There's some intergenerational approaches, but it's also, I think, a little bit more of a wording statement that rather than implementation or like a general approach on how to plan. There's a really good guide in Chile for gender mainstreaming in climate change public policy, and I think that we need that in different approaches too, like in climate justice and intergenerational issues, because if you include in the planning, in the implementation, and in the monitoring each of one of those approaches, you should expect, right, to actually have the mainstreaming of intergenerational justice. And I also think that most of the local level, this wording of this phrase of work smart but not hard, rather than hard, is really useful because local governments have little and most of the time none of capacity to actually do this and have a lot of responsibilities. So if you work smart, you can design plans that already includes a lot of issues you have to address. For example, how to prevent that young people migrates from rural local communities to cities, or how to receive young families that are migrating from cities to rural communities, which is a thing that happened a lot during the pandemic, and to harness that energy and that power into adaptation measures. And I also think, although we have like a good planning system for adaptation in Chile, I mean, compared with other situations I've been seeing here, is kind of good. We stop a lot there. We lack a lot of implementation. And the paper holds a lot of things and can hold a lot of ideas, but we still need to see those implemented. And regarding the international scale and the negotiations and this ecosystem, I will say there's still a lot to do. This is my first COP and has been overwhelming. And I will say I'm kind of smart and experienced in climate things, but it's really overwhelming. So we are, and I think it's also overwhelming even for adults and experienced people. I don't know how you can spend these 2 weeks without like taking a toll in your mental and physical health. So I think we have to make these processes more friendly for all, not just for youth, but for all. And saying that, I think we have to prepare ourselves before COP, for example, to push for more ambition in negotiations, but in the positions of our countries. I didn't actually think about that until I came here, that I should be having bilaterals with my country in Chile, not here. So they can put the youth vision and all the intersectionalities we want to see in the climate action before they come here.
Thank you very much for that, because it really puts on the table certain things that we might not think about, but are also important to consider. And yes, these COPs are take a lot of energy, and that we all know. And this is second week, so we really appreciate that you actually found this event interesting. And because our panelists had a lot of ideas to share, we're actually running out of time. But I would like to give open the space for 1 or 2 questions, if we have any questions from the audience before we wrap up. Any questions from the audience? We have 1 question here. We can take 1 more. 2, excellent. And you can direct the question to the panel in general, and they can decide who takes the question, or you can direct the question to one of our panelists directly. Please introduce yourself, and thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Samamba Mohammed. I work with the government of Uganda, and I do the technical coordination of the NAP. We are just developing our NAP. But I came in a little bit late, but I don't know who directly will respond to my question, but nonetheless, I can go ahead and ask the question. I just want to hear about how funds are trickling down to the local communities to implement this. Because one of the challenges that we have funds to implement adaptation, but you may find that the biggest proportion of that money actually means in the administration. So how best the experience that they have to ensure that at least more than 70% of the resources required to address local communities really reach the local communities, and the effective management in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a second question here from the gentleman in the third row.
Hello, thank you so much to our panelists. My name is Ronako. I'm one of MIT's student delegates. I'm from Jamaica. My question is, like you mentioned, that there's a lack of implementation, even though you might have the plans written out. I'm wondering, why do you think that is the problem? There's probably several factors to this, but if you could list out a few of the biggest ones, you see maybe there's a lack of skill set. For example, I study environmental engineering. Maybe there's not enough people studying stuff like that for wastewater management, or it's just that we do have a lot, but job opportunities are not being as well funded or something. So if you could expound on why implementation is lacking.
Thank you very much. And that one was specifically for Miko in the case of Chile. So maybe we can start with you, Miko. Why is there a lack of implementation, although there is a lot of planning?
Thank you for that question. So from my point of view, because there is not that much experimented, I would say 5 to 6 years of work, professional work. So I think the system is not transforming to address adaptation. We have done that with mitigation, kinda. We have carbon markets. I personally don't agree that much to that approach, but okay. And I will say the market, the private sector, the public sector understands that language regarding mitigation, but we haven't been able to do the same with adaptation. So every time you speak about adaptation or implementing about adaptation, I think we tend to see this like a big monster and need a lot of financing, which is true. It's not a lie. Climate risk is a complex thing. You need to understand it. You need to address it in different areas, in exposition, in hazards, in resilience, in vulnerability, etc. And you also need to translate those languages to people that take the decisions. But I also think we can have like this approach again, work smart and not hard, and try to adapt the systems to think about adaptation. And just for give some examples, you can promote that the public sector has sustainability criteria in the public buys, compras públicas. I don't know if you can help me with this translation. Public procurements, thank you very much. So you can have sustainability criteria in public procurements. So the municipality or the local government or whatever knows that they have to include waste management under the procurements and ask for the consultancy or the company that is providing services to have this approach. And we can do the same in adaptation, I think. It's a little bit more harder because it requires an understanding of all these dimensions of climate risk and adaptation, but I think we kind of stop there, like teaching climate risk and not actually making the guidelines that are needed for making the decisions. Yeah.
No, thank you very much for that. And because we're running out of time, I actually would like to pass the other question to Pilar, because this is exactly what we've been trying to do with Rosario. How do we trickle down from the national, which is federal in the case of Argentina, all the way to the municipal? Do you have any thoughts for our colleague from Uganda?
Thank you very much, Mauricio, and thank you for the question. I agree. We are at a critical moment in terms of implementation. However, we all know by our own communities the impacts, as well as, of course, all the reports that we have, that is not at the scale needed. And as you said, is really not reaching the communities and the most vulnerable. So I think that one of the most important things is related to we have structural issues. We know that adaptation finance is not enough. We know that adaptation flows are not related to needs. And that is an structural reason across the board that we need to consider. So for national, subnational, or local governments, adaptation finance is not enough. That is true. At the same time, we also know it is applicable to all levels that in terms of access, many countries really are not accessing finance directly. So direct finance is really important. That's why we saw that many times small projects of the adaptation fund can be more effective than bigger projects in many cases for communities. However, and as Mauricio said with our project, this opportunity, this very small, very specific project target with direct access for us, but in clear coordination with the national government in terms of methodology of the plans, on the governance, because as my colleague of Rio de Janeiro also said, we also have representatives of the national and subnational level in our governance, so that multi-level governance really help us to take decisions from a more coherent point of view with the NDC, with the adaptation communication, with all the instruments that Argentina has at the national level, and we can link to that. So I believe that I will not reinvent the wheel with my answer. We really need more direct access for our cities and for our communities. Specific projects many times are small grants that really help us to really prepare for the projects. And of course, many other times we have some this readiness, but then we cannot really fulfill in the actions prioritized by our government. So we also need to continue struggling and pushing for more adaptation finance for all regions, because again, I'm coming from a region that is really marginalized from international flows, as some of my colleagues here, Brazil and Chile and many others. So that's also important to have an equitable access to adaptation financial flows at all levels. So the challenges for the national levels, we know that are even bigger for communities and local levels. Yeah, thanks.
Can I add something? Briefly, really. No, I just would like to add that we are really missing local adaptation plans. In the case of Rio, we have the state plan for 5 years now, but in the local level, in 92 cities, they don't have local adaptation plans. And they are the ones that knows exactly what the project needs to be done. The budgets are there, so we can assist financially, but we really don't know what are the priorities. So we need to bring it together, the NAPs and the labs.
Okay, thank you very much. And on that note, I would like to thank the wonderful panelists that we have today. Please, a round of applause for them. They're all very busy people who have been here for a few days, and thank you for joining us this afternoon, and to the organizers as well. If you would like to know about our next events in the last few days, go to NAPGN homepage, and you will find out more about the last couple of events that we have over here. Thank you very much. Have a nice afternoon.